Hello, good morning, everyone. Um, the format of the presentation is such that if you do have a question, I'd like you or any comments, please feel free to um, type something in the chat. So it feels a little bit lonely seeing only myself on the screen. But I think it'll be great if anyone has any comments at any point. Let's try to keep this as interactive as possible. So happy to stop and discuss in detail. Okay. Right. There are a few more people coming in at this point. But I think if you'll allow me, I can maybe start the ball rolling. Okay. So again, thank you very much for joining us today. It's the first day of GAD World 2020, and it's the first time I think we're doing it online. The subject as is on screen, and if anybody cannot see it on screen, please feel free also to raise your hands or send us a message through the chat. So we're looking at the deal pipeline, prospects, and progress in Southeast Asian airports. Let me just see whether I can move this along. Right. Okay, so that's good. So as a way of introduction, for some of you in the audience, you may be familiar with Airport Investor Resource or www.airportir.com. This is information database in which Modalis inputs and updates with latest information on airport deals around the world. Okay. At a later time during the conference, if you are interested to have a demonstration or walkthrough, please feel free to reach out to us to schedule a walkthrough. Myself, I'm currently coming to you live from Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia, and it's just about 20 minutes past 6 p.m. here. Before my current position with Modalis, I've been working in an investment bank and also an operator investor in the form of Malaysia airports with investments in Turkey and India. And also bringing to you a view from both greenfield and brownfield, as well as buy and sell sides. Okay. So enough about me, if you don't mind, and moving forward quite quickly to the subject at hand. So a very quick recap of Southeast Asia. That's the tiny red dot on the screen. In essence, about 11 countries to date, including Timor-Leste, newest country in the region. And latest data indicates that the resident population is just over 670 million. We also had just below 300 million international passengers and over 300 million domestic passengers. Cargo-wise, also quite active, and number of airports a few years ago officially was close to 500 airports within this small region. So in general, a geographic area which continues to draw a lot of interest from near and far. So this is Southeast Asia. Moving on, I think I'd like to kind of just juxtapose the deal pipeline which we have on the Airport IR interface. So let me just bring it up here before we get to Indonesia. Okay. So if you can see on this juxtaposed map on the region, there's quite a lot of potential deals at the initial phase, in progress, also close to completion in the Southeast Asian region. I think there's just about something in each of those countries in Southeast Asia. And what we've tried to do today is actually to touch on certain themes in each of those states or countries, and without actually going into too much detail. As many of you in the group here will know, you yourselves may or may not be at certain stages of pursuing these particular deals. Okay, so I'll switch back to, if you don't mind, I'll switch back to the slides for the day. So, right. So I think the main thing about Indonesia is that when we talk about Indonesia, the key takeaway I would say is that a lot of people ask us, is this real or not? Okay, so if you had to take away one key point about Indonesia, we would say this time, more than any other time, would appear to be real. Meaning that, I have friends in the industry who've tried to do a transaction, consummate a transaction in Indonesia for the last 30 years. Okay, so I call them grand uncles, right? And on balance, I would say that over the next 4 to 5 years would present the best opportunity for an airport investment transaction in Indonesia. Now, why do I say this? So we can share with you that, first of all, if you look at it from a micro perspective, Indonesia has actually consummated FDIs of other similar types of infrastructure assets very recently. So within the last 5 to 6 years, they have also consummated the sale of a seaport asset. So on paper, it's 50% or 49% owned by a foreign investor. However, if you speak to people on the ground, it would appear that the foreign investor has outright management control. The same goes with toll roads, where we have friends who now have very large minority stakes and have significant input on management of those toll roads. Now, secondly, from that, we also noticed that the president is serving his final term. They can serve 2 terms. And it looks like he has a runway up till October 2024. So that, we believe, will indicate the timeline in which transactions will continue to accelerate and be consummated. And thirdly, also because we noticed that overall the whole economy is geared towards fulfilling infrastructure programs, and they are very open to creative solutions. So it's not always evident on the surface, but when you walk the ground, you can hear a willingness to consider creative solutions. And the last reason, I think, if you want to take away why Indonesia is most likely to consummate transactions now, is that state-owned enterprises are leveraged on average at a debt-to-equity ratio of about 4 times. So this is actually unprecedented even for Indonesia. And we know from our friends on the ground that they are more of on an asset sale case. Having said that, we also note that there are challenges in Indonesia, but these are not new challenges, and so we feel that these challenges, whilst real, have to be balanced overall with those push factors, if you will. So in terms of opportunities and pipelines in Indonesia, as mentioned on Airport IR, we also go into quite close detail on some of those situations. And in general, I think we would have already officially heard of the Kuala Namu and the Batam Hang Nadim, already either awarded or close to award. And then there's also the live transaction on Lombok. And there are also strong discussions or expectations of a few more coming to market soon. And those there are very strong rumors on those. So we think a few of them are quite well known to be coming into the market soon as well, over the short term and also over the next 6 to 12 months. So that's Indonesia. I think at this point also just to share that I'm happy to take questions via the chat room, or if we can. I think that's the format which this medium allows. Okay, so there's a quick question on elaborating on the Lombok opportunity. I think there were about 26 qualified interested parties who stepped forward when the Lombok opportunity was presented to the public, and these encompassed not just investor operators, but also some local entities and also some interested airport supplier vendors and so on and so forth. What we can share with you is that this Lombok opportunity, of course, the granularity is that this is part of the Angkasa Pura 1 portfolio, as compared to Kuala Namu, which is part of the Angkasa Pura 2 portfolio. So moving forward, that's also something which you may notice as part of the Indonesia landscape. So the 200% owned, government-owned operators will, as they move forward, be potentially looking to attract liquidity from interested investors. Okay. In terms of scale and size, it's difficult to immediately ascertain the price expectations of the grantors. But we think, as usual, if you look across industries in Indonesia, the multiples are quite rich, right? So in general, in Indonesia, they prefer to have quite tight concession lengths, 20 to 25, 30 years at the most. And they are trying to have investors come in at a minority level. Okay, so not so much strict guidelines on how the asset is financed, but the key point on my slide here, the first decelerating factor I call it, is that we have to understand that in Indonesia right now, foreign equity ownership is capped at 49%. And if you look into the detail of it, I think there are some efforts to try to keep it even lower. So that's one of the things that continues to distinguish Indonesia from some of the other markets. Okay. So those are some of the points about Indonesia and the current Lombok opportunity. Lombok is very beautiful area. It's not very far from Bali, and I think that's part of the attraction of Lombok to a lot of potential bidders. So yes, there's quite a lot that we can talk about Lombok, but I'm just also conscious of time that we don't get too stuck on Lombok. Happy to take on specific questions about Lombok if anyone has. So apart from that, and just to make sure that we have also a very quick touch on the other markets in Southeast Asia. Why I started on Indonesia is because alphabetically I came before most of the other countries, because I don't think we will see any investment opportunities in Brunei. So if you'll allow me, if you don't mind, I'll just very quickly move on to the next country alphabetically. So Malaysia, Malaysia is quite unusual as well, because Malaysia already has obviously a publicly listed airport operator which manages most of the airports. So for some of the airports, there's an opportunity for construction work and expansion work. But there are some opportunities, and that's why if you look at the slide, there are some opportunities below ground, I would say, at gestation phase. So there are things which, for anyone who likes the country risk in Malaysia, the demographic profiles, airline development, we think that there are some proprietary opportunities in Malaysia. But the profile is definitely quite, I would say, specific. So there are greenfield opportunities, and there are also secondary opportunities in Malaysia. Not very large airports, so we're looking at those which are mainly below 5 million passengers airport scale. The larger airport scale would require quite a bit of equity, quite a large equity check, I believe, and also a lot of partnering with local institutionals. Okay, so also happy to take on any questions on Malaysia, and I can tell you that this is all, I would say, quite proprietary in nature, what we're sharing with you. I don't think you'll be able to get this kind of granularity. There's also just a very quick question in Indonesia, which I'd like to just touch on before we move forward to the next market. It's a question about how's the view of Indonesian market moving forward in terms of opportunities, since there's talk of government consolidating tourism sector into a larger group. I think the Indonesian policy landscape has been quite steady over the last maybe 12 to 18 months. So whilst the pandemic impacts are real and quite severe for many countries, it's probably it will probably take some time, but those policy directions will probably sustain. So in the short term, I think it's not a surprise that we see some consolidation, meaning that, for example, in Indonesia, there's talk of one particular significant airline operator which may be allowed to rationalize and close down, so that the airline industry has sufficient depth and breadth for a smaller number of operators to survive. So those are the kind of things which we think will happen over the next 3 and 6 and 9 months, so that there's a better equilibrium for the industry to move on. Okay. For the Philippines, I think what we wanted to share was that, of course, the telegraphed developments in Philippines are quite clear. Bulacan is the main new greenfield airport, which will be going with the San Miguel Corporation group of companies and they've already raised some financing for that. But at the same time, the government-owned Manila Ninoy Aquino is also expanding, and there's also expansion work in Clark Airport, which is almost like a secondary airport of Manila. It's quite a mixed bag because there's quite a lot of committed investment to infrastructure and service upgrades for the capital city. But what we like about Philippines is that there are opportunities outside of the capital city. So if you do have a larger appetite for the Philippines and you are willing to take on a local partner, then there's something which I think there are what we call potential bundles or international airports, and even potential greenfield and brownfield opportunities in different parts of Philippines. So again, not really, I would say, what you would hear from mainstream press, but it's something which we believe is ripe for expansion in the Philippines. So a lot of the prior hard work for the Philippines, unlike Indonesia, has already happened. We've seen a successful transaction in Cebu, Mactan, and we've seen the government try to take on more of a developmental role in Clark and Manila Ninoy Aquino. And we think with Bulacan, the conditions will be better suited for new equity-led investments. Okay, so that's Philippines, which again, because of the demographics, because of the size of the population, Indonesia and Philippines are two of the quite attractive markets in general. Okay, if there are no questions or comments, just to share on Vietnam, because we get queries from time to time about Vietnam. And we don't have a separate slide on Thailand because I think Thailand is quite similar to Malaysia in that opportunities are actually below the surface. But recent developments in Thailand mean probably that there won't be any new opportunities unless we're talking about secondary transactions of existing established entities. So not really quite on the forefront for Thailand. But Vietnam, we get a lot of queries. So just to share with you that in general, we would summarize this in this manner. It still is a favorite of suppliers. So PPPs in the airport space tend to be a little bit more on the secondary, if you will, nature. There appears to be some greenfield opportunities in Vietnam. However, I personally think that they are actually more challenging than on the surface. So if you get to know things like the local law on land ownership in Vietnam, then it kind of presents a fundamental challenge to airport PPPs. There seems to be some potential pent-up demand in main cities as well. But as I mentioned, quite a bit on local law, which needs to be looked at before a PPP can happen. And there's obviously that other contributory factor that airlines continue to boom in Vietnam. So it's a pro and a con. So it could, we need to see where this goes because at some point airlines might not just focus on volume and they might focus on profitability as well. So then airport charges might come into question and so on and so forth. So Vietnam, a lot of press about airport opportunities. We think the probability of consummating a transaction, however, is much lower than, say, Indonesia or Malaysia, right? So that is, if you will, our summary of the current deal pipeline and prospects in the Southeast Asian region. There are opportunities in Japan, India, and Australia as well in the medium and long term. But we thought, we would be happy to kind of give granularity below the surface, if you will, for Southeast Asia, which is kind of a bit fun. Okay. So let me just check. We do have, I believe, a few minutes in terms of time. So I'm happy to discuss in greater length any questions or any comments that anyone may have. So Ben has asked a very good question. It's mentioned that we've seen, so if I may read your question, Ben, so we've seen a number of off-market approaches in the Philippines, mostly through the unsolicited proposal mechanism. So do I see any other countries in Southeast Asia that are also likely to be receptive to this approach? I say it's a good question, mainly because for those of you who are familiar with the region, there's been quite a few of these unsolicited proposals happening in the Southeast Asian region. So I can share that, just based on public information, the public press has talked about, for instance, almost half a dozen large investor operators coming up with unsolicited proposals in markets such as Indonesia and Malaysia. So we've seen to date that nothing has quite been consummated in Malaysia, and nothing has quite been consummated in Indonesia either. So based on existing information and evidence, Ben, I would say that it is more unlikely for us to see any kind of proposal being accepted. In contrast to the Philippines, which has a very defined process for such proposals, right? And if you will, I will add on here that to me, it did seem a little bit unusual that the large investor operators in this world, quite a few of them, not just one or two, actually went down the route of an unsolicited proposal, because obviously you spend quite good money in those kind of putting together those proposals, given that the existing evidence supported that it would have been unlikely to be accepted, right? But then again, hey, never say never, right? So I hope that answers the question. If somebody has another question, I think it would be good if I can also invite invite you to the stage, if you will, to ask the question. That would make it more interactive. So please feel free to just say, if you've got a question, and I'm happy to invite you to the stage so that everybody can hear something else apart from my voice. Yeah, and I have to admit, I'm not exactly 100% comfortable with the timing, because I've got GMT on the slides, and I've also got the local time. So I'm not sure whether I've run out of time or we've got a long way to go. So happy to take any more questions and add them and invite you onto the stage so that you can kind of speak out to everybody here. So Ben, maybe can I invite you to the stage if you wanted to expand on your question? Okay. I'm not sure whether anybody else has any questions or comments. But if you have any comments, I'm happy to take any more questions and comments. Thanks, Horatio. Yeah. Yep. So there's a comment. Okay, so two questions. And since we have about 4 minutes to go, why don't right? Okay, so very quickly, I think the first question is about Thailand. So yes, Chan, I'm sorry if you missed it. I didn't cover Thailand on a separate slide because basically we believe that in Thailand the structure is quite set. So essentially, AOT gets first dips on airports which can be sustainable on its own merits. So AOT is already public listed and majority owned by the state. And so it's not so easy to consummate a transaction on that basis. There are proprietary proposals, greenfields, like even what happened on the island of Phuket, right? So even Krabi. So those are opportunities which tend to require a very strong local entity like the landowner, for example, and valuations are very, very rich. So well past 20 times multiples, we would say. So in essence, that's why we've not touched on Thailand as a focus market in Southeast Asia. And kind of made that comment in between Vietnam and I think it was Philippines. So alphabetically, it was kind of politically correct. Yeah. On Myanmar, David, it's good to see you here, David. On Myanmar, I think it is quite challenging because the processes were there, the airports were awarded, and some of our friends here at the conference are involved in some of those airports. So we should be proper to say that, there was a process, there appeared to be a process, and there were some awardees or winners of developing and investing in those airports. I think the feedback we've gotten from some of those players as well is that translating those awards into contracts that were enforceable has been a little bit of a mixed bag. And the bankability of those contracts have been also a little bit of a mixed bag. Having said that, Myanmar continues to be growing economically pre-COVID. So I think our friends who are already in Myanmar are willing to sit it out and tough it out, if you will. So they're quite happy there. And we can definitely talk about Myanmar a bit more, David, on sidelines. And in terms of what's happening in Indonesia, Inaki of Aina has asked, I think we do see a long list of transactions being put on the agenda in Aki. So Indonesia, for example, for somebody like Aina who has put your hand up for Lombok Airport, according to the AP1 circular, and if you have done that and that's accurate, then I think you're quite well positioned to engage them officially. So we think that AP1 just like the other licensed airport operator, will be engaging the market on not just this, as well as other opportunities in Indonesia in the midterm. So say in the next 6 to 12 months, we should be seeing good-sized airports actually being talked about and potentially brought to the market if conditions are right. The policy seems to be accommodating. So we think that Indonesia, policy-wise, on a macroeconomic level, they have already decided. Question now is how quickly they can consummate transactions. And if you will, I think what somebody who's based in the region, what I always point out to is that Philippines took quite a while to consummate their first transaction. So it's been a while, but once the government has consummated one proper transaction, it allows them precedence to actually consummate more transactions. More precisely, in Indonesia, there will be some large airports, we believe, that will come onto the block. So being involved now early has its advantages. So that's what we've told our friends, a lot of whom are in the crowd today. Okay, I think I've taken up a little bit too much of everybody's time, but always happy to take on further questions and discussions. You know how to reach us. We are here throughout the conference. Myself, it is 7 minutes to 7 p.m. So the best chance of catching me, of course, is just about this time tomorrow and the day after, or before, if possible. But happy to organize discussions and happy to discuss further with you at a suitable time. Many thanks for joining the session, and wish everybody a great rest of the conference. Thank you very much.